Hey guys, and welcome to part four of this IPL preview. We're going to be covering everyone's favorite second team, Royal Challengers Bangalore, who never go on to win the IPL, but they provide some valuable entertainment along the way. Uh, I'll start with you, Monty. RCB, will their fortunes turn this year? And what are you expecting from them?
Yeah, well, they've actually got their left-hand opener. He's not. He's not going to be. He's not available. Because I think he's tested positive. So that's a bit of a blow. With the left-right combination of Virat, Kohli opening the batting. We got Glenn Maxwell. Glenn Maxwell was actually the that could be that pivotal difference. He provides that great impetus as a fielder on the team, and his bowling is useful, especially with them runs. Imagining Virat Kohli, AB de Villiers, Glenn Maxwell, all of them three firing. I think any team that plays against RCB, 200 is a must. 180 to 200 against RCB, because RCB will probably, they know how to set big totals. They're a good team. They've got even, Dan Christian, who hasn't, probably played as much. And he's been formidable for Notts, and won the T20 NatWest Trophy. So he's another great addition, hits a long ball, bowls useful overs. I could see, the likes of Dan Christian batting at 7, Glenn Maxwell maybe at 4, 6, 4, 5, that sort of, period where, the last 5 overs could be that difference, where Glenn Maxwell didn't really fire for, Punjab Kings to get him over the line. But this time around with Bangalore, Dan Christian and Glenn Maxwell together could be that difference where they may just make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, Nakul, coming on to you now. So a couple of things I wanted to ask you. First is Virat Kohli mentioned after the T20 series that he would like to open with Rohit Sharma in the T20 World Cup. So naturally, you'd expect him to open the innings here with RCB if he wants to get some valuable opening experience. So first question is, do you see that happening? And second, obviously, Monty said Dan Christian. Of course, they've lost out on Chris Morris. Does that mean Dan Christian gets all 14 games or at least gets picked as first choice to start with?
Virat Kohli said he was going to open this year, and I wouldn't expect that to change. Probably is the best move to get the best out of him. Whether it quite balances the team out is another question. But I've always quite liked Kohli at 3, and then having 2 more traditional openers, but then or more regular openers. But Kohli's done it a fair amount in the IPL, and if he thinks this is the way to go, and that's how. And they're going to build the rest of the team accordingly. That makes sense. Maxwell, as well as being a big name and phenomenally exciting, and we're back to sort of RCB of a few years ago where they just stacked the team with brilliant, exciting top order batters. That year they had Dilshan, Kohli, de Villiers, and Chris Gale all in the same 11. Was phenomenal to watch at times. But Maxwell does offer something from a cricketing sense as well. A few overs with the ball, and possibly in the power play, possibly in the middle order, in middle overs rather. Phenomenal fielder, and also an extra hitter, someone who can take the pressure off Kohli and maybe de Villiers and make sure that they don't have to do all the work, which in turn allows them to bat more freely, and you get more out of them that way as well. So I think that could work really well. I really like Finn Allen, who they've brought in as a replacement for Josh Phillippe. The wicketkeeper batter. So he's a sometimes wicketkeeper. New Zealand batter, has just broken into the New Zealand team, has been out phenomenal in domestic cricket, and has just and has taken to international cricket very well, seemingly in his only a few games, but still really exciting option. Monty mentioned they've got Padikkal, the left-handed opener, who has contracted COVID and might miss a few games. He had a really good year. He was second really only to Prithvi Shaw in domestic cricket this year in the one-day stuff. They've got Mohammad Azharuddin, who had a really good year in the... Not that one. There's quite a lot of IPL players this year who share the names of more famous people. It's quite fun, the not that one IPL. But Azharuddin has had...
I'm waiting for Monty, someone called Monty to...
Yeah, man. Need some more Monty representation in top-level cricket, whether that's you or someone else. But he's had a very good year for Tamil Nadu, who won the tournament. Dan Christian, I don't see him playing all 14 games, but I see him playing a role, and as Monty said, he's been brilliant for Notts in the T20 Blasters, brilliant in the Big Bash, proven winner everywhere in the world, in all formats. But I don't expect him to play all 14 games. De Villiers and Maxwell nailed on as the two of the overseas player. You would imagine with the amount of money they spent on Kyle Jamieson that he'll certainly start. I would like to see Kane Richardson get a lot of games as a death bowler, because that's the problem with RCB, and it has been for a number of years, is that Monty said, they can set 180, they can chase 180, they can chase 200, but a little bit like Rajasthan, they might need to chase 200, they might need to set 200, because they can be limited, to say the least, as death bowlers. You look at the rest of the squad, they don't really have an obvious death bowling option. They've got guys like Navdeep Saini is good at the top and in the middle. Chahal good in the middle. Washington Sundar very good in the power play. Adam Zampa very good in the middle overs. Daniel Sams very good in the middle overs. They don't really have a death bowler. Kane Richardson is as close as they've got. Mohammad Siraj would have to improve an awful lot to be a top level T20 bowler at the same level that he's shown in Test cricket. And so far we've not really seen that. So RCB, again, look a little bit imbalanced and don't quite have the death bowling option, but I think they've got a lot around that. There'll be a lot of questions this year really about if they're going to get the balance right and if they're going to be able to get a batting order that makes sense. But I think what RCB have this year that they haven't had previously is more batting depth, which should serve them well, including some good young Indian options. Sayush Prabhudesai and Rajat Patidar, who've both had good domestic seasons, are ones to watch as well. So I think there's RCB. We're back to them looking good on paper.
Yeah, I think you've covered basically everything. But I wanted to ask Monty, from a spinner's perspective, you've played off so much international cricket in your life. I wanted to understand from you. The fact that Chahal's been out of the Indian team, he's been out of form slightly. You mentioned Adam Zampa, Nakul. Do you see Virat Kohli picking Adam Zampa and wasting an overseas spot on him, having an eye on Yuzvendra Chahal's form over the last 4-5 months, which has been a huge concern? Or do you see him as a staple in that RCB team? As a spinner, what would you want from your captain if you're out of form?
Yeah, look, I will probably want my captain to back me and say, look, you're going to play the first few games. And in fact, it doesn't matter if you go the distance, if we're winning and we're doing well, I want to keep you in the side. And, we've seen with Virat Kohli, he's happy to play both leg spinners. Adam Zampa's got probably one of the best figures in IPL cricket. I think he took 6 for 19 at one stage. And when I was, in Australia, I worked with him as a youngster. He was a young, leggy, very similar sort of approach to, Shane Warne, where the balance is at the creases. He has that sort of bit of Shane Warne about him. But it's great to see him, just grow, into a formidable T20, bowler. And, in terms of Chahal, I think, he's a confident cricketer. He knows, there's a lot of players who would want to be part of that T20 World Cup squad, and the competition is supreme in Indian cricket right now. So, there's such a strong team that can probably, put out two good teams, even 3. So, I'm sure Charles got plenty of motivation, nothing to sort of, be disheartened and think, right, I need to get back to my top form, because if I don't, there'll be someone else taking my place in the T20 India team.
Yeah, and Monty, another thing I wanted to ask is, 6 months can make a massive difference. And we saw Washington Sundar and Mohammad Siraj, their careers have completely transformed in the last 6 months. And when you get that international stamp, when you've played international cricket, represented your country, then you come back and play a domestic tournament. I know IPL's got international players, but it's still a domestic tournament predominantly. Does that make a massive difference to your approach to that game? And do your standards automatically improve because your mental aspect of it has completely changed? Which I'm asking because I would like to believe that these last 6 months have transformed Sundar and Siraj to be able to contribute more in the RCB setup.
Well, firstly, I disagree with you being a domestic, international tournament. I think this is after a T20 or even stronger than, T20, internationals. IPL is the biggest tournament in cricket right now. And everyone talks about it. It is the best tournament. It attracts the biggest sponsors. Audiences around the world want to watch IPL. I know friends and families, even corporate CEOs, at 3 p.m. they go to work early, 2 hours early, so they can watch their favorite teams at 3 p.m. In England. So this is a star attraction, and it's a bigger stage, and everyone's, we saw how well, it was organized by the BCCI and the IPL in UAE. I'm sure the tournament here is going to be absolutely fantastic. And if any player is thinking like Chahal that, I'm out of form and I need to get back in, biggest motivation is just, you're playing for IPL cricket. There's millions out there who want to be part of this tournament, and I'm sure he'll find his way, because Virat Kohli, he's got high demands in fitness, high demands in performance, and we will probably see the best of Chahal under Virat Kohli during the IPL.
In the last few years where RCB haven't been quite as good, they did bounce back and make the playoffs last year. They looked a little bit more balanced. But Chahal's been the one bowler who's consistently performed for them over the last few years and has been excellent. He's developed more as a power play bowler and has been a banker through the middle overs. I would expect, I agree with Monty that, Chahal will get the first few games. And we could well see, I don't know if they'll give Zampa the extra spot, but I think you could well see a bunch of some extra spin bowlers, some used, with Washington Sundar, Yuzvendra Chahal, maybe somebody like Shabazz Ahmed, who had a phenomenal domestic season in 2020, but didn't really play very much last year as a sort of lower order hitter and spin bowling all rounder, because their first 3 games are in Chennai, which is the most spin friendly ground in all of the IPL. So I think we could well, if we are going to see the 2 international wrist spinners play at the same time, it'll be then. But then you're missing out either an extra fast bowler or an extra overseas batter, and you've got to find the balance somewhere. But I think we could well see RCB go to a more spin friendly strategy with those first 3 games in Chennai. I mean, to be honest, even if they don't play Zampa, they've got Chahal, Washington, who I thought was excellent last year, and is super adaptable and very difficult to get away, and Maxwell. So you've got 3 spinners between you who, all 3 of them could bowl 4 overs if you wanted them to, and that's most of the innings done with spin. RCB look more balanced this year than they have done for a while, even though they probably spent too much money on Kyle Jamieson.
Lastly, I wanted to ask, obviously we mentioned Devdutt Padikal's going to be missing at the top of the order, at least for the first couple of games, because he has COVID. Washington Sundar's mentioned that in the future, he'd like to be India's opening batsman. And of course, he's shown glimpses of that in that Australia tour, and of course, recently against England as well. So would you say that it's quite left field, but do you see an opportunity of him opening alongside Virat Kohli at the top of the order in the first game?
I've seen this posited by some analysts. Washington Sundar's Ranji Trophy 100 came when he was opening. He's done it a lot in the past. He bats regularly in the top 5 for Tamil Nadu. But I think with Finn Allen in the squad and with Mohammad Azharuddin in the squad, I don't think that this would be the year that, or certainly not for the first few games. I could see it maybe later in the tournament if RCB struggle a little bit or they want to try something out, but I wouldn't imagine so for the first few games.
What about you, Monty? Do you think that's an option that they can use?
Well, I don't know. Nickel may have to disagree with him, which doesn't happen very often. But obviously, when it does, I'll probably have to say that I see Washington Sundar actually opening the batting with, Virat Kohli, because we've seen, he's a very talented player, swashbuckling, batsman, which actually, he's got a lovely flow of the bat, good stride length. So that he could be that sort of player, which gets RCB to a flyer, and he's a wonderful talent. What a talented batsman he is, and we've seen his record in domestic cricket being probably his best form has come by opening the batting. So I'm sure he'll have that every case, to tap on Virat Kohli's shoulder and say, look, I've done really well in domestic cricket. Give me that chance to open the batting. And sometimes that's what it is. You just need to convince the leaders of your group and show them the keenness and the eagerness to actually wanting that role. And I'm sure, at some stage, we may see at the start of the tournament just to see how it goes, or maybe halfway through, but a lot of teams, change strategy depending on the results. That Washington Sundar, may get that chance to open the batting.
I certainly agree that he'll be tapping on his shoulder and saying, hey, you look at my record, look at my, they're on a flight somewhere and he just sits next to the captain and shows him something on his iPad saying, here's me scoring 100 opening. He's not short of confidence. I don't know if you saw that Washington Sundar's just got a dog and has called it Gabba. He's not afraid of making a big statement, Washington Sundar, very confident young man. It's certainly an option. I don't see it for the first few games, but it's certainly something that, and I'm not sure, incidentally, it would be, more to the point, I'm not sure it would be the optimum strategy for him and for RCB, given the other options that they've got with Pardekal, with Azharuddin, with Finn Allen. But it's certainly something that wouldn't be a massive shock if it does happen at some point in this tournament.
Yeah, and I think, like most other topics that we've covered, most of the teams that we've covered, only Father Time will give us the answer that we need. So thank you guys for joining me for part 4, and I'll see you in the next part where we'll cover Chennai Super Kings.